Friends, imagine this. It is 3 p.m. in the afternoon. You are making a presentation or holding a training session, and your audience has just had their lunch. You want to deliver this very important message in your presentation or organize an activity in your training session, and you feel that your audience is totally disengaged or finding it difficult to keep their eyes open. Now, does this sound familiar to you? Well, this is a situation faced by every presenter or every trainer at some point of time in his life. And it is not that when you find this out, everything is lost. There are ways and means to keep an audience engaged. And in this video, I'm going to talk about exactly that. Friends, in this video, I'm going to cover how to keep your audience engaged. I'm going to talk about 6 points. The first 5 points are going to be what you should be doing. And the sixth point will be the mistakes which you should avoid. And every point is going to have some sub points within that. So I'm going to refer to my notes, which are kept here on the side, because this is a slightly longish video where I'm going to give you tips on how to keep your audience engaged. So let's get started with point number 1. Point number 1 is read the room first. Friends, what are the signs of a disengaged audience? Signs could be something like this: scrolling on the mobile phone, slouching on your chair, yawning, blank expression on the face, slow reactions to your jokes or your questions, avoiding eye contact. These are some of the signs that an audience is completely disengaged, right? And when you see those signs, you need to take action immediately. You can't afford to wait. So what do you need to do? Well, the first thing which you need to do is scan the room on a regular basis, right? You need to catch those signs, as I said. You need to pay attention to not only people sitting in the first or the second row, but the people sitting at the back. If the arrangement is a classroom type of an arrangement, you have to pay equal attention to people sitting at the back, because they are the ones who are away from the trainer and they might feel a little neglected, and their attention will, go somewhere else. So it's very important that you scan the room on a regular basis and pick up these signs that the audience is getting disengaged. Friends, in this situation, you have to be a doctor who's monitoring the pulse regularly. And the moment the pulse falls, you have to take the medication. You have to give the medication immediately. And in this case, the medication are the steps you're going to take to keep the audience, to get the audience back, right? So that was point number 1. Read the room first. Let's move on to point number 2. Friends, point number 2 is use the pattern interrupt technique. Let me repeat that. Use the pattern interrupt technique. Now, friends, our brains are wired in such a way that if we keep listening to the same thing for too long, our attention fades away. Now, this is called habituation. Now, what do you do to deal with this? Well, you interrupt the pattern. And that's exactly what you need to do if you find out that your audience is disengaged. And I'm going to talk about 5 techniques out here within this point to give you examples of pattern interrupt. Technique number 1, change the pitch of your voice. So let us say that you have been speaking at a particular pace for quite some time. Suddenly start speaking loudly. Or pause for some time. Or make your next point in a whisper, right? For example, let's say that you're explaining a particular concept. You pause and then you say in a whisper, friends, here is what nobody tells you. What have you done? You have paused, you have taken your pitch down, and you have broken the pattern. Now people are going to look forward to as to what you're going to say next. So that's technique number 1, change the pitch of your voice. Technique number 2 is change your position. Now, friends, if you are addressing an audience and if you have a large enough stage, well, then keep changing your position from time to time, right? What happens out here is that when you change your position, people are forced to look at you, which kind of, they have to make an eye contact and they have to move their eyes. That interrupts the pattern. If you are in a smaller training room with whatever training space you have, this works there also. Just shift your position from the center to the side and back again to the center. So that's technique number 2, change your position. Technique number 3 is, friends, use silence, right? So let's say you're making a point, suddenly go silent for about 3 to 5 seconds. Friends, silence can be very, very uncomfortable. People will start wondering, okay, oh my God, what is going to come next? And then continue with your point. Okay, so that's technique number 3. Use silence. Be silent for about 3 to 5 seconds. Technique number 4, ask a direct question, right? So you could ask something like, so a show of hands, if this is something you have experienced in your teams before. Now you have asked them a direct question. They will be forced to physically raise their hands if they have experienced that particular situation in their teams before. You ask them a direct question. And technique number 5 is tell them a story. Friends, a story acts on your brain and it kind of activates different parts of your brain. So, for example, you could say, let me share a story of a client who did not pay attention to this principle and the impact it had on their revenues. Now, suddenly people will wake up and say, oh my God, what happened? What happened if this client did not pay attention to this particular principle, right? So you have told them a story which they are going to look forward to, right? So that is point number 2, pattern interrupt technique, where I have talked about 5 techniques. Number 1 is change the pitch of your voice. Number 2, change your position. Number 3 is use silence. Number 4 is ask a direct question. And number 5 is tell a story. So that was point number 2. Let's move on to point number 3. Friends, point number 3 is build in interactive moments. Now, friends, whether you're giving a presentation or you are taking a training session, it is very important that you build in interactive moments to re-engage the audience. Please remember that passive learning drains the energy. Active participation creates it. I'm going to give you 3 examples for presentations and three techniques for training. Let's start with presentations. For presentation and conferences, technique number 1 could be a quick poll. So something like this. Show of hands if you have faced this challenge last week. This will re-engage the audience. You've done a quick poll. Technique number 2 for presentations could be think, pair, share. You could say something like this. I want you to turn to the person sitting next to you and discuss this particular scenario for the next 1 minute. Again, this is something you have paired up people, and this is something which will bring the energy back into a tired audience. That was technique number 2. And technique number 3 for presentations is hold frequent Q&A sessions. Rather than having the Q&A session right at the end, have frequent Q&A sessions so that people ask their question and get their clarifications. That's another way to keep them engaged. So those were 3 techniques for presentations and conferences. The 3 techniques for training could be, number 1, doing hands-on activity. So for example, so now that you've understood the concept, I want you to take 2 minutes and write down how are you going to use this in your work scenario tomorrow. So people are going to get engaged in that activity. They will think and write down. So that's technique number 1. Number 2 is have a group discussion. Put people into groups. Tell them that discuss this particular topic. And I'm going to take out 2 names who will come in. Names of 2 groups who will come and present their discussion here. So that is a second technique, group discussion. Number 3 could be plain simple physical movement. Ask the people in the front to move at the back. Ask the people at the back to move in the front. So you've just done some physical movement. People will become a little more alert. So it's very important that you keep building in these interactive sessions. Friends, a pro tip for both these scenarios, whether it's presentations or training. Research tells us that attention fades away or drifts away beyond 10 minutes. So it is very important that you keep building in these interactive moments, whether you are presenting or whether you are taking a training session. So that was point number 3, build in interactive moments. Let's move on to point number 4. Friends, step number 4 is use humor and energy. Now let's talk about humor first. Now friends, humor can be a very powerful tool in presentations and training sessions. But you've got to be very careful in using this particular tool. Never use humor or jokes which are racist in nature, religious in nature, or political in nature. You never know when the room could erupt into something which you cannot handle. So always use humor or jokes which are relatable in nature. For example, you can say something like, I know that you're trying to fight your sleep right now. I know how it feels. I was in that seat about 2 years back. Now you've used relatable humor. The participants will smile and they will acknowledge the fact that you've understood what they are going through right now. So, technique number one, always use relatable humor. Number two, raise the energy or match the energy. Don't suddenly elevate it. If you feel that the energy in the room is low, don't suddenly elevate your energy. Take it up step by step. Because if you do it suddenly, it'll look very jarring and fake. So raise the energy step by step. That'll look natural. Okay. So match the energy step by step. That's technique number two. Technique number three is physical energy. Now, this is something I talked about earlier. You've got to should be shown as physically active. Keep changing your position from time to time. Use your hand gestures. Point out to the slide if you're using any particular visual aids, right? If you're using any facial expressions, kind of point them out. So use the physical energy. That adds a lot of energy to the room. And the final technique, which is number 4 in this section, is that give strategic breaks. Now, friends, if you are taking a 8-hour training or a 9-hour training, one of the best ways is to give frequent breaks from time to time. Maybe after 1.5 hours, give them a 5-minute break. After the next 1.5 hours, you anyway have the tea break or the lunch break and all. But give strategic breaks from time to time so that people can refresh themselves and come back. So strategic breaks is quite a simple solution, but keep giving these breaks from time to time. So that was point number 4, use of humor and energy. Let's move on to point number 5. Friends, point number 5 is adjust your content delivery. Friends, sometimes energy may not be the problem at all. It could be your content delivery and the way you are delivering the information to your participants. And here I would like to give you 4 techniques. Point number 1 is vary your pitch. Now, I talked about this earlier in pattern interrupt, but I want to emphasize it again as it's very important. Whenever you are talking of some very important points, sound exciting, take your voice up. If you're talking about something important, you want to stress on something, slow down, right? You want to talk about something which is a suspense, well, start whispering. If you vary your pitch, your audience will always stay engaged, right? So that's technique number 1, vary your pitch. Technique number 2 is use visual aids wisely. So friends, let us say that you are using text-heavy slides for 15 minutes, right? Switch over to maybe an image or maybe a video clip or maybe a single image, or maybe close the projector and you start speaking on your own, right? So you need to use your visual aids wisely, because if you keep switching from one to another, the attention will move from one thing to another and it will not remain monotonous. So that's technique number 2, use your visual aids wisely. Technique number 3 is, friends, chunk down your information. Now, this is very important and I'm a big fan of this chunk down of information. Don't keep speaking on a particular topic for 20 to 25 minutes in a monotone voice, right? You could speak on something for, let's say, about 10 minutes, and then you could say something like, so that was the strategy which we talked about. I would like to now shift gears and move on to XYZ. Now, the moment you say, let's shift gears, the audience kind of wakes up and you have sent the information that now he's going to talk about something different. So chunk down your information into small bits. That's technique number 3, right? And technique number 4, the final one in this, is bring it on them, make it about them. So ask the question to the participants after explaining something, that how do you think this is relatable to your work? And if this were to happen tomorrow, how will you handle it? You have made it about them. You have explained something and made it about them, right? So that was point number 4, make it about them. So friends, that is point number 5, about adjust your content delivery. And I talked about 4 items in that, 4 techniques in that. Let's move on to the final point, which is point number 6, which is the mistakes to avoid when you're making a presentation or trying to keep the audience engaged. Friends, mistake number 1 that you can commit is ignoring the signs of low energy. Now, I talked about the signs of low enthusiasm at the beginning of this video. People scrolling on their mobile, people slouching in their chair, lack of attention, not responding to your jokes or questions, no eye contact, Well, if you ignore these lines in the beginning, you're going to lose the audience completely. The moment you see these signs, you need to act, right? So that is mistake number one. Never ignore these signs. Mistake number two is being apologetic for their tiredness. Now, friends, if you make statements like, I'm sorry, I know this is a boring topic, but I have to cover it. Well, that's a blunder you can commit. And that gives them, these apologetic statements give the audience more reasons to be disengaged because you've admitted yourself that the topic is boring, but you have to cover it. So never apologize for their tiredness. Mistake number three is speeding up to cover the content. The moment you realize that people are low on energy, you start speeding up. That's the worst mistake you can do because the moment you start speeding up, you become difficult to follow. So that's mistake number three, which you should not commit. Do not speed up to cover the content or to engage the audience. Mistake number four is adding more content to engage people. So friends, the moment you notice that people are disengaged and you add more content, that's another blunder which can be committed, right? In fact, on the contrary, try and delete some unnecessary portions which you have already covered earlier and go at your normal pace, right? But do not add more content to keep the audience engaged. That's mistake number four. Never add more content to keep the audience engaged. And finally, mistake number five is don't be fake. Friends, fake enthusiasm is very difficult to catch. The audience, the participants will make out that you're being fake about it. Be natural, identify the signs, and take the steps which I have talked about in this video. So friends, I hope you've enjoyed this video. I have given you 5 points of what you should be doing and 1 point of what you should not be doing, the mistakes you should avoid if you have to engage an audience that is tired. If you have liked this video, please do give me a thumbs up. Please do like this video. It does take a lot of effort to make these videos for you. I want to reach 5K subscribers and I'll be really happy if you could help me achieve that. Thank you very much and I will see you in the next one.